Hey guys, how's it going? Alright, so I got something really cool to show you, something I kind of figured out on the fly, but is one of my signature things that I like adding into it. It's really more cool looking than it is difficult to do, but it always adds a lot of interest to the level. So what am I talking about? When you're hitting onto the same spot 2, 3, even 4 times, I'll show you what some of these setups look like. So let's look at this from the top so I can show you what I'm talking about. We're gonna watch this entire sequence because it's important that the upper track affects where we're going right here. 1, 2, 3, boom, done. Notice some familiar elements. Okay, let's stop there. So what I really want to focus on is this section right here. This cool contraption, right? We hit the same spot 3 times where shells just appear when they need to. Now the reason we started from the beginning was because it all starts here with this track, right? So what do we have in here? Just a shellmet. So we're anticipating full jumps by the time the player gets over here, the way everything is timed. And you have to play around with the timing a little bit when you do these sometimes. So when I add the bricks, it just buys more time for the shell to go back and forth. Notice you have to have a one-way behind the note block, because what happens is if you don't, the shell will hit the note block, bounce up, and sometimes it'll go backwards. So you want the shell to keep moving forwards. These note blocks are hiding Koopas in them, right? So the shell is activating those. In terms of by the time we get over here, let's remove some of these saws. So this looks kind of crazy, right? But we want reason for the player to have to hit this on-off 3 times in order to continue playing, since it's not possible to make it up this hill. Right, so I've already done a stack of munchers and a Koopa Trooper here. So this way, by the time we activate it once, they'll slide down here. The second time, third time, they'll fall down here. The first time we know we hit this Buzzy Beetle, right, and then a flying shell is going to activate it next. So that's the one that goes up ahead. Right, so this one up here is already on its way down. By the time we're jumping up, it's flying down off here and into the spot of where this Buzzy Beetle was, right? So it's just gonna appear there. Because we hit the on-off switch, it's gonna activate this contraption, right? So if we look at here, like the shell's just gonna sit there on top of that conveyor until we hit the on-off switch, and then it's gonna throw it into that spot. Pretty cool. Okay, we're gonna start from the top because we need to start the track sequence from here. Okay, right? 1, 2, 3, and now you can see another shell going over there, right? Okay, you're probably wondering what this is all about too. There's actually another part of this that's going on. There's a shellmet in this guy, right? So when this shell flies off from the top here, this is the second shell we're hitting, right? It's gonna knock into this question block, which is gonna start another sequence. So you notice that second shell came down and knocked into this question block, activating a separate sequence. Let's remove this. This is also familiar elements. You've probably seen them in the other videos that I've done. Here we have a flying Koopa that rises up because this shell knocks into it, right? So yet another cool piece, and then it continues from here. But I really want to focus on this contraption itself. So what's under here? Pretty straightforward. There's nothing really hidden here, other than we just don't want the player going into this space, so that's where all the saws came in initially. Let's look at a second example with a totally different setup, but essentially doing the same thing. You can see there's some familiar elements here. So we actually have a delivery system coming through here. There's a shell that will be activated all the way back here. It's gonna fly up here and land in here. There's another shell that's gonna be flying over here at an earlier point, will be trap-doored, activated from this on-off, fall down to this spring, slowly glide itself over here, bounce up on this note block, bounce up on the spring, side spring itself into this spot, and then there'll be another one as well that's being activated from here, so a total of 3 times. This looks kind of overwhelming, so let's look at it from the top in its entirety so you can see what I'm talking about. One, 2, 3. This time, we're going to remove the saws so you can see a little bit more. there's a lot going on over here, and I've covered the first half already in a separate video. Let's take a look at this. We got a shellnet in here. I'm gonna try and simplify this for you as much as I can. So this one flies over here, right? This side spring is activated once we've hit this on-off switch, right? So there's a shell here. It's already activated blue by the time we get here. We land on this, we activate this. The shell falls through the trap door. At the same time, it starts this sequence of the side spring falling down. So by the time we hit it, that's activated up there. We're bouncing down on here, and we're on our way up by the time this side spring is coming down. So it's essentially jumping over to here because this muncher is going to drop down and allow this beetle to move over, right? So that's what that's all about. But we're really talking about the little shells, right? The shellnets. So the shellnet flies over here and lands into this space. So that's going to be our first shell we land on. This second shell is going to be slowly working its way over. And again, we're in the blue off state, right? So it's open right now. Okay, we activate the switch. There goes the shell over ahead. Here's the side spring. 1, 2, 3, right? So this shell, by the time it comes over here, is timed such that it flies into here for the second time, right? So we got to see that. And then blue shell is just waiting to get in here. So it's already been kind of flung. It's kind of flying back and forth really quick because it was already activated from this side spring. So it's going right into between this spot, and by the time we activate it again, it flies into this spot. And we already have the red block here, so that if the shell ends up bouncing into this wall or into this red block, it's still going to just lock itself into place over here. And then again, we have this setup that we saw in the earlier example of a stack coming down after 2 separate activations. So that allows us to continue on. So a different setup, but same idea. Okay, let's look at another triple setup. Very similar theme. We have a shell that's going to be coming through here. We're going to be hitting this thing 3 times, right? With another shell flying over and then a drop down. Let's look at this. We also have another setup here with a trapdoor thing going on, which we kind of saw earlier from activating. That's just using a side shell going across. But I really want to keep looking at these contraptions specifically of hitting the same thing. Two, 3, boom, escape. What did we notice here? We noticed the shell that was coming over here, right? You're probably wondering what this is. It's just dropping a buzzy, right? Let's remove the saws, okay? Let's look at this again without the saws. One, 2, 3, boom. This is a little bit different in that the track that's coming up top here is actually the last one to come. So first time we come here, there's a buzzy here already. By the time we're jumping up here and activating this, Mario's mid-air, this red block disappears and this spring flies over into this spot, ready for Mario to land on again. Keep in mind that had activated this red block down here, so this shell is flying back and forth. It hits the brick, goes back, and then comes back again. So this second shell is here, Mario's up in the air, and while Mario's up in the air again, the shell is busy coming down for the landing spot, so for the third shell. And that's how we end up landing on that. And then this whole squid thing is our escape out because it's not possible to make this jump up here without another assist. Similar concept, but still really cool. You can incorporate these sort of contraptions into your levels. This one, we hit it 4 times. 4. Okay, this one I'm particularly proud of. It looks totally chaotic over here, but I'm gonna try and break this down for you so you can kind of see how this looks. Let's start by doing an entire sequence. Okay, let's start from the top because we need to start at a point where we activate it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and there we escape. Pretty ridiculous, right? Okay, so let's try and break this down. starting beetle is just here, right? So that's gonna be our first hit. Okay, we're gonna watch the thwomp as he activates the on-off switch and that shell. Did you see that? Right up here, this activates this shell. So that's coming from the thwomp. Even though we're hitting the on-off switch, it's doing two things. It's turning off our landing platform here, forcing the player to keep going. So it's keeping that order of events and sequence and timing all in check. So this shell comes flying through here while we are busy bouncing around here and activating this on-off switch. These one-ways are here because this is activating, there's a little boom brat that falls down, and he's gonna land over here and be part of our little landing party. This block just works with timing. Let's remove this saw. Because this contraption is so much larger, because we're using an extra layer of shells to fly down. We're gonna look at the entire sequence without saws, but essentially the first one we're gonna hit is this buzzy over here. The second one is gonna be the one that's flying from up above. The third one is gonna come from this lower section here. It's gonna be this shell flying over, and the fourth one is gonna be from over here. Notice there's red-blue blocks that are gonna control the timing of the side spring coming down. So let's look at this from the beginning. Okay, let's look at, there's the thwomp activating the first shell. So we hit the first buzzy, first shell, second shell, third shell. Flying, okay. We want the player to be forced to jump the same height each time, so that's where you can see that in action again, right? So we're gonna get a consistent timing from the player, so that's why it's important that on-off switch is high enough to allow time for it to come over. This muncher acts as kind of like a wall, like a bounce-off wall. As we activate the switches, these drop down, which allows us to escape. Let's see, let's take a look at the conveyors. Okay, so this one's facing back, this one's facing back, because we want the shell to kind of hug the wall until we're ready for the side spring to slam into it. Pretty cool. As a side note, I want to show you another contraption that combines three different things from past videos. We have flying under a buzzy, right, that's on a conveyor. We have stacked question blocks activating, and then we have hitting the same spot more than once. So we can combine these things and with like an upper level track to create an entire sequence, right? So now we're taking all these elements that we've already learned and combining them. Let's take a look at it in real time. 1, 2. Okay, so you can kind of see how we combined the overhead buzzy to fall into a spot. Now there's not locking it into place, so we just timed it and placed it so that it would be pretty much directly underneath the player. Okay, let's look at these activated from under here. 1 shell, 2 shell, and you can see that this brick up here allows it to pause just long enough so by the time Mario lands on this and bounces over here, it's gonna land in this spot. I indicate them generally with sometimes with a change, like a muncher instead of a spike, so we know a general area, and I also was leaving indicators. You don't have to, but I would recommend it if you want people to get a better understanding of your level. Depends on how hard you want to make it, ultimately. Just another neat little contraption of combining some of the elements that we've learned thus far in our other videos. Thanks for checking this out, and I'll be sure to post more stuff. If you guys have anything that you want me to demonstrate or any other contraptions you've seen that you'd like a better understanding of, let me know.